Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening to learn about the Lenape Regional High School District bond referendum, which is included on the November 2nd general election ballot. I'm Matt Webb, Assistant Superintendent of Schools, and your moderator for tonight's virtual community forum. Now let's meet our panelists for this evening's virtual community forum, who will review financial benefits of funding projects through a bond referendum, as well as a list of proposed projects and how they would benefit students, staff, and the LRHSD communities. First, Dr. Carol Birnbaum, Superintendent of Schools. Connie Stewart, Business Administrator. Heather Zanakis, Director of Curriculum and Instruction. Tony Vora, Director of Buildings and Grounds. And Mr. Tony Catani, Lenape Principal. Other important people tonight are the ones who are watching this via YouTube live stream. Here's how they can submit questions for the panelists. Visit lrhsd.org/forum question. That will be along the bottom of the screen throughout the forum. Complete the form so we know which panelist should get the question. Listen for the full hour because we're going to try to group questions together by topic. And that form asks for an email address so we can send you an answer in the event we don't have time to get to your question during our 1-hour forum. And this forum is going to be a great way for our community to learn more about the bond referendum. Now, Dr. Carol Birnbaum will introduce our Board of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Webb, and welcome everybody to our presentation on the bond referendum. It's my pleasure to introduce our board members, particularly the ones that are in Mount Laurel, the ones that you've probably seen out and about talking about the bond referendum. We have Mrs. Paula Lee and Mr. Mark Jones, both from Mount Laurel. And of course, we have our board president, Mr. Barry Fitzgerald, all of whom I am sure, along with all of our 11 board members, are very interested to hear what our public is asking about this bond referendum. So we want to thank you for your participation and thank you for being here in this forum. This is just one of the many ways that we are trying to get the word out about our bond referendum. It started last spring when we gathered a group of stakeholders from throughout the district. They were our communications committee. They were made up of parents and community leaders and staff, and of course our students, because student voice is very important to us in the Lenape Regional High School District. And that committee helped really shape our messaging from last spring until now. At each board meeting since last spring, we've been unfolding little pieces of the bond referendum as information was coming in about how much state aid we're going to get or about the great low interest rates that our bond council has told us about. We've done lots of presentations at PTO meetings and PTA meetings throughout our 8 townships. We've presented at our own faculty meetings and to our own parents at back to school night. Of course, we have a great website that you should visit for more information, has a lot of access to our frequently asked questions. Our social media, we're in social media, we're on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and you'll see lots of little videos that you should be able to digest very easily and repost for people's information. So they want to learn more about it. That's where you want to steer them to, the website. We've been at lots of events. You may have seen Mr. Catani and Mr. Jones and Mrs. Lee at the Mount Laurel Fall Festival at Laurel Acres Park with some students and staff members talking about the bond referendum, handing out flyers as they're waiting in line at the food trucks. We've made lots of announcements at our sports events. We have videos running in our snack stands. We have signage out. It actually came from the Mount Laurel parent group. It's like, are you going to do signs? And we're like, we'll get signs out. So we're trying our best to get the word out. We're glad that you're here to join us, and let's get going. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Birnbaum. And as a reminder, if you have a question for any of these administrators tonight, visit lrhsd.org/forum question. We received a few questions from citizens during the October 13th forum, and we will repeat those during tonight's forum as well. But first, let's briefly answer, what is a bond referendum? Well, it's a vote to approve the sale of bonds. School districts can sell bonds to generate funding and then buy them back with interest over time. Similar to a home equity loan to make improvements and pay the loan back over years. The timing is right now for this referendum because we're approaching a payoff point for a previous bond, and we'll be getting a third of the cost of our projects in state aid. So we can update and enhance all of our schools with zero change to the tax rate. Dr. Birnbaum and Mrs. Stewart, how did we get to this point where the Lenape Regional has a bond proposal on the November 2nd ballot?
Well, over the last several years, we have been working on our long-range facility plan. This plan identifies future facility needs so that they can be addressed strategically.
Not only through our long-range facilities plan, Mrs. Stewart, but also a few years ago, we engaged with our community during our community engagement series for our strategic planning process. We had over 400 people come at each of our high schools to share their thoughts about what they like about the district and what they want to see improve in this district. And air conditioning and more programming for career pathways were consistently brought up at all 4 locations. So these are things that we've heard from our students and our staff and our parents that they want to see as improvements in our school district. Plus, we had over 1,000 people respond to a survey as well. And it all aligned that these 2 things are important to our community.
And we also took a look at our fiscal strategy. We want to meet our immediate and long-term needs, and with careful planning to select projects that will qualify for the maximum state aid. But this is only through a voter-approved bond referendum can we access this special type of aid.
Thank you for those details, Mrs. Stewart and Dr. Birnbaum. Now let's talk about how to vote so everyone knows how to vote in advance and on the November 2nd ballot.
Thanks, Mr. Webb. What people want to look for when they're in the voting booth or they're voting at home in person in mail-in ballot is the big question. It'll either be in the middle or off to the side. Look for the box. There it is, the graphic, Lenape Regional High School District question, where you will see how much each of the projects will cost at each of our facilities and how much state aid, about a third of the cost of this project, is going to be covered by the state of New Jersey. You can vote by mail. I know in my ballot, I live in Southampton. The question was on the back of the ballot. So I actually had to look for it on the back of the ballot. So if you don't see it on the front, turn the page and look for that question. You can also do new in-person voting this year in Burlington County. We can do early in-person voting. So starting as early as October 23rd and all the way up through Halloween, you can go to 7 different locations throughout Burlington County, no matter where you live, to cast your vote in person. And of course, you can go to your regular polling place that you're used to and comfortable voting in every November 2nd on November 2nd.
Thank you. That sure is a lot of detail about voting, but it's important because your opinion won't count unless you submit a ballot. Now, all details are on the lrhsd.org/vote website, including an application form for a mail-in ballot and the times and locations for those special early voting polls, and a link to search your polling place on November 2nd. And as a reminder, the public can also submit questions for the panelists. Visit lrhsd.org/forum question. Also, this forum is being recorded so people can watch it later, and a link to that recording will be on the referendum website. Now, before we get into specifics on the referendum, we want to share a video that gives a good overview of what the Lenape Regional could do at all 4 high schools. It's about 5 minutes long, and then we'll explain how we can make these improvements with no change to the tax rates in any of our communities.
We have a plan to modernize all our schools, and property owners will incur zero, that's right, zero new taxes. On Tuesday, November 2nd, the Lenape Regional High School District will ask voters to consider a bond referendum. Only through this type of vote can we access more than $24 million in state aid to help pay for over 1/3 of our capital project costs. Our plan calls for updating building exteriors and instructional spaces, replacing HVAC systems and adding air conditioning, customizing classrooms to expand career-focused curriculum, and upgrading athletic facilities with LED lighting at all schools and turf fields at Lenape and Seneca. With voter approval of this tax-neutral bond proposal, We can tackle these projects and more with zero change to the tax rates in all Lenape District communities.
We can keep the tax impact to zero, largely because the projects in our bond referendum qualify for over $24 million in a special type of state aid. This is money we either use it or lose it. This special type of state aid is only available to us through a voter-approved bond referendum, and it's a different pot of money than the money that we've seen continuously cut by the state through our school funding formula.
That $24 million, combined with old debt reaching its payoff point, results in $67 million worth of improvements with zero change in tax rates. Proposed projects are considered must-haves for the district. They're on the district's long-range facilities plan, and many were also mentioned by community members during the 2018 strategic planning process. Students, staff, and visitors will appreciate seeing air conditioning on the project list. All 4 schools would get upgraded heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, replacing some systems that are over 60 years old.
Upgrading our HVAC systems will enable us to run more efficiently, to have better control, to temper air better, to have more air efficiency into our buildings, be overall more effective for the learning environment. It'll also save us a lot of money in the long run. We have systems that range from mid-50s to the 70s to the 90s. Newer equipment runs more efficiently. It requires less maintenance. Now's the time to do it. I mean, if we have the ability to get 1/3 of that money back, it's a win-win.
Newer HVAC systems will also further improve comfort levels, student focus, and air filtration and flow.
We absolutely see an uptick in students who visit the nurse's office when we have very hot and humid days. The students are so overheated, they complain of headache, nausea, fatigue. They require time to cool off and hydrate.
Another set of projects in the referendum involves customizing classrooms and adding equipment for career-focused learning. Regardless of home high school, the LRHSD will open its expanded career pathway programs to any district student.
If the program were to be kind of like revamped and more robust, it would make it so that way a lot more kids would be able to find things that they love, for example, metalworking, and feel like this is really cool, I enjoy doing this, and move on to further classes in the program.
We realize that not all of our students' career goals will require a college degree, and we aim to support those students and their training for high-demand positions in our newly renovated educational spaces, as well as providing internship opportunities to provide hands-on experiences for those students.
The exteriors of our schools are also due for some maintenance, as are the athletic facilities. The bond proposal calls for turf fields at both Lenape and Seneca. This would create equity among the athletic facilities at all district high schools. And turf is the modern standard for high schools. Athletes who play on grass can be at a significant disadvantage during high school and at college.
It's definitely challenging to play on a grass field when most of our neighboring schools do have turf fields.
The field here at Lenape High School, after any kind of weather, is certainly unpredictable. It becomes very difficult at times to host an event after large amounts of rain, and at times our schedules are impacted.
The capital projects in our bond referendum directly support our specific plans to ensure the future of the Lenape Regional High School District. Even replacing aging systems such as water heaters are carefully timed out so that costs don't pile up. Part of that careful timing is to fund these projects through a voter-approved bond referendum, which gives us access to that special type of state aid, over $24 million to the Lenape Regional High School District, about 1/3 of the cost of the entire project. This will ensure we can invest in the future of all of our schools in the Lenape Regional High School District. It's a plus for all homeowners, and it has zero tax impact.
To learn more about the proposal, follow LRHSD Vote on social media and visit lrhsd.org/vote for additional details and voting information. The Lenape Regional High School District bond proposal will be on the general election ballot, with mail-in voting starting in early October and in-person voting beginning October 23rd. The final date to cast a vote is Election Day, Tuesday, November 2nd.
That's some exciting stuff for the future of Lenape Regional. Now we'll get into more details about those projects in a few minutes. But first, let's learn how a bond referendum is part of a strategic approach to funding. For that, we turn to Mrs. Stewart, the district's business administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. There are two financial elements that are falling into place that makes this the perfect time for us to update our schools. First is the ability to be eligible for that special state aid. And second is that some of our existing debt is being paid off. The state aid, excuse me, the state aid is revenue that is collected from across all of New Jersey, but it is only shared with school districts that use a voter-approved bond referendum to pay for capital improvement projects. We are constantly looking ahead for what the needs will be in the future for our schools. As an example, our current HVAC systems are getting too old to be efficient, and they are not reliable. Along with the improvements on our long-range facility plan, we package these projects into our bond referendum, so that could result in receiving that special state aid. Without voter approval for the bond referendum, Lenape Regional will miss out on getting more than $24 million in state aid for our capital improvements. These projects must be done at some point in the future, so if not through an approved bond referendum, these projects will need to be paid for out of our general fund, which will not qualify for state aid to offset costs. Having a zero tax impact for debt service tax levy will continue the approximate payments that we have been making and paying for over the years.
Yeah, you mentioned that these projects, a lot of these projects are must-haves, and they're going to have to come out of our general operating budget. I just want to remind everybody that the Lenape Regional High School District, along with 200 school districts in New Jersey, are chronically underfunded by the state of New Jersey. And as a result, we're continually looking for alternate means to get financing or grants or donations to the Lenape Regional High School District to get the things that we need and want. This is one way that we are going to be able to get $24 million from the state of New Jersey. Our taxpayers send money to Trenton all the time, and we see very little of it come back each year. This would be great for our taxpayers to actually get money from the state of New Jersey. They have this pot of money and they're ready to release it to us, and all we need is the voter approval to get that pot of money.
Just making sure my mic is back on. That's right, Carol. The state aid is a key factor in our ability to do these projects without raising the tax rate. The proposed projects are estimated to cost about $67 million, and the state aid covering a third of those costs, a $24 million helping hand from the state. The rest of the $43 million cost would be covered by the same tax rate that exists now. The district is nearing the payoff point for current debt, which voters approved years ago. This approach uses a continuous tax rate to fund the continuous costs for maintaining our excellent schools. With state aid and a steady tax rate, the bottom line is that we get $67 million worth of upgrades with a zero tax change.
Thank you, Mrs. Stewart and Dr. Birnbaum. We do have a few questions related to finance. So this first one is for you, Mrs. Stewart. Would the tax rate fall if voters reject the proposal?
No, the tax rate would not fall. This proposal is being made as Lenape Regional High School District finishes paying off a bond that voters authorized years ago. And the final payment is lower than it has been. That final $3 million coming off the debt tax is small in comparison to the tax rate for the Lenape Regional High School District's general operations. Taxpayers may not even notice the difference between 2021 and 2022. However, the must-dos in the proposal will still have to be done. The HVAC, roof replacements, restroom renovations, concrete restoration, and other projects must be addressed to maintain the facilities and the district as a strong asset for the real estate market. Without voter-approved bond referendum, the must-do projects would be funded 100% from local taxes as Lenape loses the opportunity for more than that $24 million in that specific type of state aid.
Thank you. Question number 2. Why don't the projects listed on the website have a cost assigned?
We rely on our architects and financial advisors to estimate the project cost on a broad scale. If we make those details public, we will be violating the spirit of the public bidding process, which is designed to have all contractors compete for these jobs. The bidding process is one way to ensure we get all the components of the proposal purchased and installed at the best available price at the time. It's better for taxpayers to allow contractors to submit bids in a competitive arena.
Thank you. Our third question: if the project costs exceed the estimates, even exceeding the 10% set aside for contingencies, what are the priorities? Mr.
I'll
Morrow?
answer that question.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So we go out to bid, we get a certain price, and the question is if we exceed that price and we also exceed our contingency money. So we go out for a bid. We're very specific on what our expectations are when we go out to bid. The exact project is outlined, the exact equipment, the exact, the plans that we put in place that the contractor should install. We're confident that those projections are proper, but with not knowing what's behind walls, not knowing whatever could be underneath something, we don't know all those things, and nor does a contractor. So we put extra money in there called contingency. So if, for example, we come up and we're going to open up a wall and we see a pipe that's in a way, we'll use that contingency money to remove that pipe, so we don't have to do a change order that needs board approval and increase the cost of the project. But I can say confidently, if we outline a project and the contractor bids on it, that's the project we were going to get at the end. In the 23 years I've been doing this, it's always worked out that that's what we're going to do. Whether we use the contingency completely or we use a little bit of it and we get a credit back at the end, the project as stated will be completed. Unless something off the wall happens that is out of control of everyone's hands and there is no money left. But that would not happen. It hasn't happened in the 23 years I've been doing it. So we have a lot of professionals and we have a lot of oversight on projects. So we're confident that anything that we put out to bid will be done exactly as we expect it to be. And under budget, hopefully.
Thank you, Mr. Vora.
Sure.
We have another financial question. The bond referendum asked for approval of $66 million, and the projected state aid is assumed to be $24 million. Will bonds be issued for the total? If so, what is to be done with the extra $24 million raised by bonds, or are bonds issued incrementally and state aid received incrementally? Why call it a $66 million bond referendum when only $42 million is estimated to be needed?
Mr. Webb, to answer that question, the bonds will be issued for a total of $67 million. After the sale of the bonds, a payment schedule is then set up over the next 20 years for the district to repay the bonds with principal and interest. With that schedule, the state will give us the funds, 1/3 of the principal and interest due in each fiscal year so that the district can pay the principal and interest payments in full. It's like the district taking out a loan and the state is helping us make the payments every year. We pay our share from the taxes that are collected, and the state gives us their share to make the total payment that's due.
Thank you, Mrs. Stewart. We have another financial question. The ballot includes wording about, quote, with respect to the final eligible cost of the project, end quote. Can we be assured that all projects and their estimates have been deemed eligible by the state, or Are there any costs which are known not to be eligible? If not eligible, what are those costs / projects?
Right. All of the projects that are eligible by the state are items that are for educational purposes. And all of the projects that were presented to the Department of Education were approved to be done. We have received the final eligibility letters several months ago, verifying that the state will contribute the $24 million over the life of the bond payoff. The eligibility affects how that number came to be, but not the forecast for the payoff. The state also gave us which projects that were eligible for the aid and also the ones that were not. The state does not include the projects of turf fields, stadium lighting, and the press boxes to be eligible. And those costs are approximately $5 million out of the $67 million.
Thank you. And it looks like our final financial question. What was the previous debt for?
I'm sorry, I keep muting my mic. The previous debt was from our voter-approved 2005 bond referendum. The projects included upgrades to Lenape, Shawnee, and Cherokee. Past generations have paid it forward, and how today's graduates have benefited from those improvements. And with this bond referendum, our future graduates across the district will then also benefit from these referendum improvements.
Thank you, Mrs. Stewart. So it looks like we have a new question coming in. So we have another financial question. So the question says 66 million minus 24 million in state aid equals 42 million. New debt plus 6 million of old debt equals 48 million total debt. Is that correct? Is the question. And if so, how long will it take to pay this off?
I'm not sure where that individual is getting their numbers for those amounts. I know the $67 million with less the 24 million that's coming from the state comes out to 43, 67, 24, yeah, 43 million. And they are, again, just rounded numbers. And what was the second part of the question? I'm sorry.
Plus 6 million of old debt.
The 6 million, the 6 million of old debt is broken up between the outstanding bonds now. So in the next couple of years or the next year, about $3 million of that old debt will fall off. And we still have $3 million left over to pay. That $3 million is going to be paid out and finished in 10 years. And the new debt, the payments will continue out for 20 years.
I believe you answered the question, Mrs. Stewart. Thank you very much. So 20 years to pay off this bond referendum.
That's correct, yes.
Thank you. As a reminder, the public can submit questions for the panelists by visiting lrhsd.org/forum-question. Also, this forum is being recorded so people can watch it later, and a link to that recording will be on the referendum website. Now we'll turn it over to Anthony Voro, our Director of Buildings and Grounds, to begin the discussion of projects we could fund through a bond referendum, starting with upgraded heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems at all 4 schools.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. So replacing the systems at all 4 schools is among the most significant projects needed to improve the efficiency in terms of maintenance and cost savings over time. So our maintenance department does a great job in the Lenape Regional District, but maintaining old systems that are 60 years old, it just becomes very cumbersome and not very energy efficient and not effective. Upgrading now would enable us to add the additional air conditioning if we upgrade our heating systems now. And all the students in the Lenape district would benefit from this upgrade, especially with temperatures and kids now with computers in every classroom and kids carrying computers. The heat load is just phenomenal at this point. And I don't know if everyone agrees, but it just seems to be getting hotter out as time goes by. It's here it is October and we're going to be 84 degrees tomorrow. So again, it's just a reminder that, you know, we live with air conditioning and kids should learn with air conditioning. It's not just about the air conditioning though. I want to just ensure you that heat also needs to be part of this. If we're aging, if our systems are aging out, it's not just adding air conditioning, it's replacing the heating systems. By law, we need heat. By law, we don't need air conditioning, but if we lose heat, we can't open. So, you know, please understand that if systems are 60 years old and we're saving parts because they don't make them anymore, eventually we're going to run out of those parts. So we need to do this, and you know, we need to do it now. We're going to upgrade the climate control systems. Right now we have to go to some systems manually and check and, you know, make adjustments to those systems manually. So imagine you do this at your one heater at your house. Imagine going to, you know, 75 classrooms and doing it manually. The new systems will give us, you know, hands-on control through a device such as an iPhone or even, you know, a desktop or a handheld device, any handheld device. So that also makes it, you know, makes our ability to, you know, have the environment that's conducive to education. It's not just for students either. I mean, you have to teach in there too. So that hands-on ability is going to be very effective, you know, tool for us to maintain our systems. And again, it's funded, you know, through this bond referendum. We get 30% of it's, you know, paid for through the state. You know, like I said in the video, it's a win-win. So it's time to do it. I think our students and staff deserve it.
Yeah, I'd like to share something about the air conditioning as well, Mr. Voro. It's obviously extremely impactful for our students and their education and for our teachers. If anyone out there now are coming from the elementary schools of Mount Laurel, all of our Mount Laurel schools have air conditioning. It's already difficult enough to transition as a freshman into a high school with 1,900 students, and you're doing it so on a variety of different levels. But one of the biggest shocks that our students come in with is, one, how big the building is, and two, how warm the building is in September. As Mr. Vorer said, tomorrow's going to be 84 degrees. Well, that's nice. It's 84 degrees in the courtyard, but it will be about 88 to 89 in the classrooms by around period 4. The temperatures in the hallways just heat up. You have 1,900 teenagers walking the building. They have, all of our students have masks on, our teachers have masks on. It's extremely warm. So just imagine trying to learn calculus or about US history or anything of that nature and trying to pay attention and focus with the temperatures being 85, 86 degrees in your classrooms. It's extremely challenging for our students and for our staff. And that is the month of September and October, and then it begins back up in May and June. But right now, with the new HVAC system and all the things that are going on, it would also, you know, be able to help us adjust all of our temperatures in our classrooms, where some temperatures are sometimes colder than normal and sometimes warmer than normal as well. So it'll help our students a great deal. If you came to back to school night, you had a firsthand account of what it looked like and felt like in our building. And we had over 1,000 some odd people here for back to school night. And many of you were coming out to the courtyard to get a relief from the building and from the heat because it was so warm in all of our classrooms. And no, we didn't turn the air off because we don't have air. And no, we did not turn the heat on at all. It's just that warm sometimes at Lenape. So this would be a great impact for our students and for our staff to have a better advantage of learning here at Lenape.
Thank you, Mr. Voro, and thank you for that perspective, Mr. Catani. We do have some questions regarding projects. Number one, will all of the rooms in all of the schools be air conditioned once improvements have been implemented?
Yes. So the intention is to air condition every educational space. So if a student goes in there to learn, that space is going to be air conditioned. That includes the gyms. We use the gyms for not just educational spaces, but we use the gyms for events when it's raining. And if you've ever been to Lenape in a gym, it's hot. It's hot. And you pack 2,000 people in there, it's even hotter. So, that was one of the questions that came up, in these student and parent forums that, we need to air condition those spaces. It's considered educational, so it's covered under the referendum, and we're going to air condition it.
Thank you. Question number 2. Why isn't maintenance of these systems covered in the regular operating budget?
Oh, I can start, and of course, Ms. Stewart, as the financial steward of our budget, you can jump in. Our facilities, they need constant maintenance, and it is a part of our regular operational budget to budget for regular maintenance. And on top of that, Mr. Voro's maintenance crews, they do a great job. If you walk into our buildings, Lenape is 60 years old and it looks as good as Seneca does, because our crews do a great job maintaining those. But part of budgeting is not just the regular operational budget. Part of the budgeting is planning out those big ticket items that you can't pay off, on your monthly bills, right? Like a home equity loan, right? We're going to think of this big ticket item as debt is falling off here in the Lenape Regional High School District. That's when we want to plan to do those big projects. And because when we do it that way through a voter approved bond referendum, the state will finance a lot of that. So if we're doing these big ticket items in our regular operational budget, they're at 100% cost to our taxpayers. But if we do them through the bond referendum, then 30% of it's going to be picked up by the state. So that's why we plan it this way.
Dr. Birnbaum, I couldn't have said it better.
Thank you. We have a question here, also related to finance. So Ms. Stewart, this one is for you to start with. If the money was managed better, could we avoid going into debt?
For our schools, using bonds to generate funding is part of a strategy. Saving up for these major expenses would mean the district holds on to millions of dollars every year before spending it on capital improvements. Spreading the cost over many years is closer to pay as you go, which is the way our regular budget works, with tax revenue collected every year and spent every year. But unlike the regular budget, projects funded through the bonds get us a specific kind of state aid. We could pay 100% of these costs through the regular budget, or pay about 70% through a bond. Taxpayers in our communities are sending that money to the state anyway, and we want some of the money to come back to Lenape Regional.
Thank you, Mrs. Stewart. We're also going to ask Mr. Voro to talk a little bit about the proposed projects in the referendum that will impact our athletic facilities. Mr. Voro?
Sure. So one of the main items is turf fields at Lenape and Seneca. So I'll touch on the maintenance of grass versus turf, and I'm sure Mr. Catania will go into, about the turf need over there at Lenape too. So just picture grass on a day where it rains, a half inch to an inch, and you got a big game that day, and you're going to go out there and you're going to tear up that grass field. Well, if you can manage to get through the game, safely without tearing it up too much and causing issues with injuries or anything like that, and, you're not going to be playing on that field anytime soon after that. With turf, those are things you don't have to worry about. You don't have to worry about divots in the ground. You don't have to worry about trip hazards in the ground. You don't have to worry about fertilization. You don't have to worry about cutting it. You don't have to worry about lining it. Turf fields have all that built in. We do minor maintenance on a turf field throughout the year to keep the warranty. We do some testing of it and things like that. But it's lined for 5 sports. You could take one game, one sport after another, and just repeatedly play on it, no matter what the weather is outside as far as rain. You know, we've done it many times already at 2 of our facilities where we see sports. We'll play a game, and then the little guys from the town come on and they play. The guys and girls play their games, and immediately after they walk off, we're going to play our games. And we've been doing that for years, and it's become common culture for us at Lenape District to take advantage of that turf and give the grass a rest. But I'm sure Mr. Catani could talk about the importance of, you know, how it would benefit Lenape.
Well, it would benefit Lenape in a variety of ways. You know, talking with my athletic director, Mr. Laddie, we strategically plan our stadium usage because of that, because the field gets beat up so routinely. In the fall, we routinely play about 8 to 9 games in the stadium. Today, we had a field hockey game, a senior game in the stadium, but it was so beat up from the previous football game the other day, and we had boys soccer and girls soccer on there, that we would love to play more games in the stadium so fans can come and sit in the stands and watch their kids play, that we could have music in the stadium playing, we could have an announcer announce the games, right? But we could have more games at 3 o'clock, at 5 o'clock there. But right now we play about 8, 9 games in the stadium, you know, per fall. And then we're concerned with the field of how it's going to be in the spring, right? Hoping that we don't have a bad winter so that we can play more of our spring games in the stadium. But it's always a gamble with that. The other part is when our student athletes are playing in a variety of different schools in our area, in the Olympic Conference alone, there are 15 schools, and 13 of them have turf. 2 of them do not, us and Seneca, right? So you should see the look on some other schools' faces when they come to Lenape and Seneca, I'm sure, of we're playing on grass. But it's also we're practicing on grass all day and all night, and then we go and perform on those fields, right? And perform on a turf field and try to be competitive. It also would benefit our marching band as well, who practice an enormous amount of time and want to use the fields all the time, right? And our teams seem to use the lines all the time. They don't know how to get off the line of our football team or field hockey or band, right? They could utilize the fields for, you know, as much time as they needed without beating the fields up, whether the weather was impacting it or not. It would impact us greatly in a variety of ways as well. Health and physical education to our graduation. We're extremely concerned about graduation. If it rains the night before, if the kids' shoes or heels are going to sink into the ground, we have to be very particular of what we do in our timing of utilizing our field. So it would be a significant impact for our students and our Lenape community as well as a whole. And our Mount Laurel students are playing on turf fields in Mount Laurel and then coming to Lenape and playing on grass. So there's a variety of impacts there.
Thank you, Mr. Catani. We did have a question about turf fields, but I think you touched on it, but I'll read the question, and if any of our panelists want to add some more, please weigh in. So the question was, why should we put money into turf fields when they are not for education and not every student plays a sport? So I know Mr. Catani touched on that with talking about how the band uses the fields and they're also used for graduation. Do any other panelists want to weigh in on that?
No, I think Mr. Catani covered it really well. I mean, our state championship band deserves sure footing, right? Isn't it hard enough to, I don't even know how our band members can play an instrument and march in time and do all those formations and then have to worry about divots and unsure footing. To be on that turf would really just enhance that band members experience. Plus, health and PE is a required component to our education. Every student has to take 4 years of physical education, and we can utilize the turf for our PE students. They love to go outside, right? But if it rained the period before, they can't go outside. But now with the turf, they can.
It also impacts, Dr. Birnbaum, a couple different factors. One, it always seems like it's wet out there in that grass field, no matter if it hasn't rained in 15 weeks. It's always wet at nighttime for our games. But there's also other components too for our athletes as well of there are now state championship rules where we cannot host a home game if we're on grass because the ground could be so uneven and beat up at the end of the year that championship level competition cannot be held at a school that does not have turf fields. So it is a disadvantage for some of our student athletes as well, particularly in the spring seasons of lacrosse, is becoming a factor for us from the NJSIA.
Thank you. We had a question about the press boxes. What are the press boxes used for?
So I'll go into that a little bit. So through investigating this referendum, press boxes came up. So I inevitably went out and asked questions about how we want to improve our press boxes, and so we can start some pre-designs of what we need to do. And what I found is that these press boxes hold a lot of people in there. They hold referees, they hold visiting coaches, they hold your home coaches, and what that allows them to do is have an upper level view of what's going on in the game. So they're scouting people, they're calling plays, you got the referees reviewing plays, things like that. But one of the things more importantly that we have to understand too, it's used by students, and students who work for LDTV come out there, they'll film games. And right now what I saw is there's no space for them. There's no hookups for them to hook their equipment up. It's just the deterioration, especially of Lenape's press boxes, is just over the years. It's been fixed to a level where it can't be fixed permanently anymore. So it's been decided through this referendum that they'll be getting a completely new press box, and we're hoping that this new press box is certainly going to give enough space, especially for our students to go up there and be part of that whole program as it relates to sports and broadcasting that. But Tony uses that press box, Mr. Catani does, so I'm sure he's got some things to add about that too.
Yeah, I've been up there many a night. I do the announcing at a variety of different events. We utilized it just recently for our ice cream social after our evacuation for all our students, announcing and putting music playing up there. It just right now is deteriorating and it needs to be upgraded, right? So I don't know exactly how old the press box is, but sometimes there's maintenance that needs to be done on our houses and different things around our properties. And this is one of them for here at Lenape. And it's a significant piece, right? So it is one of another part of our building that needs to be maintained, and an older building in the district establishing here in 1958. So it's one of our pieces of maintenance as well.
Thank you, Mr. Catani and Mr. Boro. As we mentioned earlier, we went through a strategic planning process in 2018, and that helped us gather input from many stakeholders across the district, including more than 1,000 community members. This helped us set future goals for the district. And one thing that consistently came up was the need for enhanced career-focused programming to support the interests and ambitions of all of our students. Now our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Mrs. Heather Zanakis, will discuss how our bond proposal includes funding for in-district career pathway programs.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Good evening, everyone. We have been focusing in the Lenape Regional High School District on our 2 graduation initiative for many years. First graduation from high school and then graduation from college. And we want to make sure and ensure that this initiative also includes, provides opportunities and includes these opportunities for students who may not need a college education, a college graduation to pursue their goals, their career goals. So what we're looking at and what has come out of the strategic planning process with the students and their parents and the community members is enhancing our career pathway opportunities for our students. So we have many opportunities for our students now, and what we're looking to do is dive a little deeper, enhance the classrooms, create actual pathways and experiences, forging partnerships with businesses and community members so our students can get actual experiences that will prepare them for a job right after graduation. So that is one of the big pieces of our career pathway program, is deepening what we have and making sure that they have these hands-on experiences. So what we're doing is we're looking at our different schools, and we are going to create these pathways open to any students in the Lenape Regional High School District, and they can pursue these career pathways at different schools. So at Lenape High School, we're looking at a metal fabrication lab and a welding facility. We have some space already at Lenape for that, but this will go deeper, and we'll create classes and provide updated industry standard equipment for those students and to have those experiences. At Seneca High School, we will be enhancing our automotive program that already exists at Seneca. And again, we have the program and students take some courses, but this would be a full actual 4-year career path for them. And then at Cherokee, we will be adding to our woodworking and developing it into a carpentry program. And so again, students from our schools could choose to pursue whatever career pathway they're interested in at one of those given schools. And the idea and why it's so relevant right now is because we all see everywhere we go and drive around, we see the signs that they're looking to hire people, and there are jobs everywhere. And local businesses looking for people to fill that need. And what we're trying to do is prepare students as soon as they graduate from high school, they could have a certification that could, and we've built partnerships where we could land them a job right after high school. And just a few stats, because they're staggering. I'll give you an example. The automotive industry says that by the year 2024, there will be a deficit of 642,000 jobs in the auto, diesel, and collision technical industry. In the welding society, they project that there will be a deficit of 400,000 workers by 2024. So those are some big numbers. And what we're hoping to do is prepare students in our career pathway programs to be ready, if they're interested, to get a job right out of high school.
Outstanding. Thank you, Mrs. Anakis. We do have a question regarding career pathways. Doesn't the county-run vocational high school, BCIT, have space for auto and carpentry instruction?
Yes, they do. And that is an option. However, if students are looking to come to the LRHSD, specifically, if we're looking at Lenape, our students are able to come to our school and experience the career pathway program if they're interested, as well as they have this ability to participate in all the clubs and activities and extra things that they're provided in our high schools, as well as experiencing all of our huge program of studies, other classes that they may be interested in. So they get to do both. And the added bonus is they get to go to school with their friends that they've known since kindergarten, many of them. So they don't have to go to a different school. They can stay right where they are, or they can choose another school in our district if so interested in a different career pathway. But the way we see it is they get the best of both worlds, and they get to experience all of it, the complete package.
And Mr. Webb, one of the parts I love about Lenape with that is the diversity of interests that our kids have. And you don't exactly know that at the age of 13 or 14 when you're making a decision of which school you can go to. So you go to a comprehensive high school like our own, and then you discover metal shop, and you discover the carpentry, the automotive, right? You discover Project Lead the Way, you discover JRTC here at Lenape. And that's the really coolest part about it. So they can start discovering this when they're sophomores or juniors, when they start to find their way. But going to the Burlington County school, you decide that at an earlier stage. And that's sometimes challenging, but that friendship component, we're asking students to make a decision to follow my passion if they're at 14 years of age, or follow my friends. Now we have the ability to bring all of our students here from Mount Laurel and seek some of their interests and passions here at Lenape High School a little bit better and serve all of our diverse interests here.
Well said, Mr. Catani. Thank you, Mrs. Zanakis and Mr. Catani, for those insights. So upgraded HVAC systems and athletic facilities and the expansion of career pathway programs are among the most significant projects in the Lenape Regional Bond Referendum. But the full list also includes many projects to update interior and exterior appearances for both improved efficiency and learning experiences for our students. Mr. Voro can now briefly cover some of these additional projects.
Sure. So what you want to expect first is you're going to see LED lighting in all the classrooms. You're going to see LED lighting in all the hallways. LED lighting is not only better to be under while you're looking at something, it's very cost effective. It's very cost effective for maintenance. You're also going to see renovated locker rooms at Lenape. You're going to see renovated restrooms. I don't know if you saw in those pictures that the restrooms where they got the urinals that go all the way to the floor. There's probably a reason they don't have urinals that go to the floor anymore. But regardless, you're going to see electrical upgrades. In that video, you probably saw an old electrical panel that has switches and fuses in it. Think about the electric that's provided in our buildings in 1960 or early 50s that we're feeding computers from those electrical sources now, and it's not effective. It's not clean power. It's not the power that we need to run our systems in our buildings. So those upgrades are going to help, and you're going to see upgrades to windows and certain other spaces outside cosmetically on a building, but mostly interior upgrades you're going to see right away.
Thank you, Mr. Voro. Looks like we're getting close to the conclusion of our forum here as we're up against the 8 o'clock hour. But I do just want to remind everyone that this is being recorded so people can watch it later. And we do have a link to that recording on our referendum website. We have time for one more question. And this is for Dr. Birnbaum. Why not ask for more and make more improvements since the projected tax impact is zero?
I like that question. That actually came up a lot in our communications committee by our enthusiastic members. When we were seeing that, last spring it was going to be near zero. And then over the summer, we found out the state was going to cover more projects than we thought. And then it actually came down to zero. They're like, well, let's get more, which is great attitude, but it's not part of our planning process, right? These projects come from our long range facilities plan. And those are the types of projects that need to be in the bond referendum. We can't just add on something that's maybe a new trend right now. We have to have this careful, thoughtful planning. And that way we are saving our taxpayers money because we're doing it through the bond referendum and through that careful planning. Plus, it's COVID, right? And COVID has impacted families in a variety of ways, to use Mr. Catani's favorite saying, a variety of ways. But one of those ways is it impacted financially our families. And the last thing we want to do is go out with an initiative with extra things that weren't part of the long range facilities plan and aren't things that our community members told us through the strategic planning process that they wanted, and put any undue burden on our community. We want to be smart. We want great things and great upgrades for our schools, but we can do them when this debt is falling off and when the state can pay for more money. And as far as things that we want for our future, we have those in our long range facilities plan, and we'll just be patient and we'll wait until new debt falls off. And then that will be a perfect time to go back out again for those extra things that we may want to see in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Birnbaum. And thank you to everyone for taking the time to learn more about the Lenape Regional's bond referendum before casting your vote in the November 2nd general election. We know the interest and involvement in our community shows in the LRHSD, and it's one of the things that makes us even stronger. If you have additional questions, you may find your answers on the lrhsd.org/vote website. Also follow LRHSD Vote on social media. And finally, You can email additional questions to vote@lrhsd.org. Your opinion won't count unless you submit a ballot. All details are on the website, including an application form for a mail-in ballot, the times and locations for those special early voting polls, and a link to search for your polling place on November 2nd. Thank you again to our panelists and to the public who tuned in tonight. As we have said, a link to the recording will be on the referendum website. Good night, everyone.